The first thing that went wrong was the silence. Not the normal kind you notice at night when traffic dies down, but the kind that feels edited, like someone reached into the world and muted a track that was always supposed to be there. Before we start, hit the subscribe button now and comment where you are watching this from. I remember standing in my kitchen with the sink running, watching the water hit the metal basin, and realizing I couldn't hear it anymore. I could see the ripples, see my hand moving under the stream, but the sound was gone. I shut off the tap, heart already picking up, and that was when I noticed something worse. I couldn't hear anything else either. No refrigerator hum, no distant cars, no wind through the trees outside. It felt like my house had been sealed inside glass. I snapped my fingers near my ear, hard enough to sting, and there was nothing. Then, just as suddenly, everything rushed back at once. Too loud, overlapping, wrong. The fridge groaned. The pipes knocked. A car honked somewhere far away. And underneath it all was a sound I'd never heard before. Faint but steady, like breathing that wasn't mine. I stood there frozen, counting my own breaths to make sure the sound matched. It didn't. I told myself it was stress, that I'd been working too many night shifts and my brain was misfiring. But even as I thought it, I felt the lie settle in my chest like a weight. Things like that don't just happen, not without a reason. And over the next few days, the reasons started to reveal themselves in small, careful ways, like something testing how much I noticed. It began with patterns. I've always been the kind of person who notices routines without trying. The way the streetlight outside my bedroom flickers exactly twice before staying on, or how my neighbor's dog barks at 6:12 every morning when the mail truck passes. After the silence incident, those patterns started slipping. The streetlight flickered 3 times. The dog barked at 6:11, then again at 6:09, like it was correcting itself. My phone clock was off by a minute every time I checked it, always behind, never ahead, no matter how often I reset it. I laughed about it at first, even joked to a coworker that time itself seemed tired, but the laughter felt hollow, like I was speaking into an empty room. The night shifts didn't help. I worked security at a small office complex on the edge of town, the kind of place that was busy during the day and completely dead after dark. My job was mostly walking empty halls, checking doors, watching cameras that showed the same unmoving angles for hours. I liked it because it was predictable, or it used to be. On the first night after the silence, I noticed one of the cameras was slightly off, just a few degrees, but enough that the hallway looked longer than it should have, stretched. I checked the physical camera, adjusted it back, and watched the feed correct itself. When I returned to the desk, 10 minutes later, it was off again, tilted just enough to show the corner where the hallway disappeared out of frame. I told myself it was a loose mount, old building, normal problems. Still, I started paying closer attention. That's when I noticed the reflection. In the camera that faced the lobby, there was a glass wall that reflected the opposite side of the room. I'd walked through that lobby 1,000 times and knew exactly what should appear in that reflection. The front desk, the potted plant, the exit sign. What I saw instead, late into the night, was a shape standing just outside the reflected angle, close enough that part of it bled into view. It wasn't clear enough to describe as a person, more like a suggestion, a darker patch of dark in the glass. When I stood up and looked directly at the lobby, there was nothing there. When I sat back down, the shape was gone from the reflection too, as if it had stepped back. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I checked the timestamps on the footage. There was no glitch, no skipped frames. Whatever it was, it had been there exactly as long as I'd been watching. I started noticing it everywhere after that. Not the same shape, not even the same feeling, but the same idea. Like something was always just outside the frame of my attention. At home, I'd catch movement in mirrors that stopped when I turned. At work, doors would unlock themselves seconds before I reached them, then lock again behind me. My name started appearing in places I hadn't written it. Once, I found it scratched faintly into the dust on my car window. Not carved, just traced, like a finger had drawn it while the car sat overnight. I didn't tell anyone. I don't know why. Maybe because saying it out loud would have made it real. Or maybe because some part of me already knew this wasn't something that could be fixed by sharing it. The breathing sound came back a week later. I was lying in bed, lights off, scrolling on my phone when I heard it clearly, right next to my ear. Slow, patient, almost curious. I held my breath. The sound continued. I rolled onto my other side, and it shifted too, staying close, like it was listening for me to move. I didn't sleep that night. By morning, the sound was gone, but something else had replaced it. The feeling of being remembered. Not watched, exactly. Remembered, like I was an object someone had set down somewhere and was planning to come back for. The rules started forming after that. I didn't know they were rules at first, just things that seemed to keep everything from getting worse. If I left a light on in the hallway, the silence didn't come back. If I covered the mirrors in my bedroom before sleeping, I didn't hear breathing. If I avoided looking directly at reflections after midnight, I could get through a shift without seeing the shape. These weren't conscious decisions at first. I just noticed patterns. When I did certain things, the world stayed mostly normal. When I didn't, it pushed back. Once I forgot to cover the bathroom mirror. I woke up in the middle of the night with the strongest sense that someone was standing just out of view, close enough that I could feel the heat of them. I kept my eyes shut, heart racing, and listened as something shifted its weight on the tile floor. When I finally worked up the courage to open my eyes, the room was empty, but the mirror was fogged, like someone had breathed against it for a long time. There was a single clear spot in the center, wiped clean in the shape of an oval, positioned exactly where my face would have been if I'd been standing there. After that, I never forgot. The scariest part wasn't fear anymore. It was familiarity. The presence, whatever it was, didn't feel hostile. It felt patient, like it was letting me learn, letting me adjust. Sometimes, when I followed the rules perfectly, I almost forgot it was there. Almost. That's when the new discoveries started. The ones that made me realize this wasn't just about me reacting to something external. It was about something changing the way the world interacted with me. My phone started showing notifications from apps I didn't have installed, all of them time-related. Alarms that hadn't been set. Reminders that said things like, soon, or not yet. Once during a night shift, the security system logged an entry using my credentials, at a time when I was clearly on camera, sitting at the desk. The log showed my name, my badge number, and a timestamp that was 2 minutes in the future. I stared at it, refreshing the page, watching the clock count up until it matched. When it did, the entry disappeared. I checked the cameras. For exactly one frame, one single frozen image, I saw myself walking down the hallway toward the server room. Same uniform, same posture. But my head was turned at an angle it shouldn't have been, eyes focused on something behind the camera. Then the feed resumed like nothing had happened. I didn't quit my job. I thought about it. But something held me there, a sense that leaving would break the rules in a way I couldn't predict. Instead, I adapted. I documented everything, not in a journal, but in my head. Writing things down felt dangerous, like giving it permission to read along. I memorized times, angles, sounds. I learned that the silence always came in increments of exactly 9 seconds, that reflections lagged by half a second after 2:17 a.m., that the breathing was loudest when I tried to ignore it. The presence responded to attention. The more I acknowledged it, the closer it felt. The more I pretended it wasn't there, the more it found ways to remind me. There were moments when I thought it was trying to communicate. Once, every screen in the security office went black at the same time, then slowly brightened to show the same image. A view from inside my own bedroom, angle low, like from the floor, near the closet. I was at work when it happened. I recognized the pile of clothes, the crack in the wall, the way the moonlight hit the edge of my bed. The timestamp in the corner read a time that hadn't happened yet. I watched, frozen, as the feed showed the bedroom door opening slightly, just enough to let darkness spill in. Before I could react, every screen snapped back to normal. I drove home faster than I should have, every red light feeling like a test. When I burst into my apartment, the bedroom was exactly as I'd left it. No sign of anyone else. But the closet door was open a few inches. I closed it gently and sat on the bed, shaking, realizing that whatever this was, it wasn't bound by my location. It wasn't following me. It was overlapping me. The idea settled in slowly, the way really bad realizations do. This thing wasn't a separate entity moving through my space. It was something that existed in the same outline of time and place as me, slightly offset, like a misaligned transparency. That explained the reflections, the delayed movements, the future timestamps. It explained why it knew my routines so well. It wasn't learning them. It already had them. The thought should have terrified me more than it did. Instead, it felt inevitable, like noticing a crack in a foundation you'd always assumed was solid. After that, the world felt thinner. Sound sometimes came a fraction too late. My own reflection occasionally blinked out of sync. People would repeat themselves in conversation, not because they forgot what they'd said, but because the first version hadn't quite landed in the right place. I started choosing my actions carefully, aware that somewhere, someone, another version of me might be making a slightly different choice. I wondered if that was where the presence came from, a place where the rules had already broken. The final change happened quietly. No silence, no breathing, no obvious warning. I woke up one morning with the distinct sense that I was no longer alone inside my own head. Not thoughts exactly, more like echoes. Memories that didn't belong to me brushing against mine. Moments I hadn't lived, flickering at the edges of my awareness. Standing in rooms I didn't recognize, watching people who looked like my friends, but weren't. And through all of it, a steady feeling of recognition, like someone finally lining up two mismatched pieces and nodding in satisfaction. I still follow the rules. I still cover the mirrors. I still leave the hallway light on. The presence doesn't push as hard anymore. Sometimes, late at night, when everything is quiet in the normal way, I catch myself wondering if the reason it feels patient is because it's already finished waiting. Because somewhere, slightly out of sync, it's already stepped fully into my place. And what I feel now isn't being watched, but being remembered from the other side. The way you remember a house you used to live in, occasionally checking to see if the lights are still on. I started noticing gaps after that, not missing time exactly, but moments that felt already used, like I was stepping into scenes that had been partially lived before I arrived. I'd open my fridge and feel a strange certainty that I'd already stood there earlier, hand on the door, making the same choice about what to eat, even though hours of memory lay between. At work, I'd begin a hallway patrol and feel a quiet relief when I reached the end, as if I'd been unconsciously bracing for something that never happened this time. That relief was always followed by a faint disappointment that didn't feel like mine. It felt borrowed. The echoes in my head grew more organized, less like static and more like whispers behind a wall, never clear enough to understand, but consistent enough to recognize as language. Sometimes they surged when I was tired, when my guard was down, and I'd get flashes of rules I didn't remember. Learning. Don't stop in doorways. Don't turn around if you hear your name twice. Don't acknowledge reflections that don't acknowledge you first. I followed them instinctively, and each time I did, the world seemed to settle, like something inside it approved. My dreams changed too. They stopped being symbolic and started feeling procedural, like rehearsals. I'd dream of walking through my apartment in perfect darkness, knowing exactly where every piece of furniture was without touching it. I'd dream of standing in front of mirrors that showed empty rooms behind me instead of reflections. In one dream, I stood in the security office watching the cameras while another version of me walked the halls, and neither of us acknowledged the other. But we both knew we were performing our roles correctly. I woke up from those dreams calm, almost rested, which scared me more than the nightmares ever had. The breathing returned, softer now, not pressed close but drifting through rooms, like ambient noise. It no longer startled me. Instead, it felt like confirmation that I wasn't misinterpreting things, that the presence hadn't left, only changed how it occupied space. Once, I caught myself matching my breathing to it unconsciously, syncing my inhales and exhales to the rhythm until I realized what I was doing and forced myself to stop. The sound paused when I did, as if listening. I don't know why that moment unsettled me so deeply, but I spent the rest of the night sitting upright, lights on, repeating my name in my head like a tether. People around me began acting thinner. That's the only word I can use. Conversations felt rehearsed, not scripted, but constrained, like they were following tracks that didn't quite fit anymore. My neighbor smiled at me in the hallway one morning and asked how my night was, even though I'd never told him I worked nights. When I hesitated, he tilted his head slightly, mirroring a gesture I'd seen in my reflection before, and said, "Sorry. Habit." I didn't ask him what he meant. I started avoiding eye contact with strangers, not out of fear of them, but fear of myself reflected back through them. Technology became unreliable in specific ways. Not glitches, not crashes, but behaviors that felt intentional. My phone battery would drop from 50% to 0 in seconds whenever I tried to record audio at night. Security footage archived itself under dates that hadn't occurred yet. Once, I tried to send an email to myself describing everything, thinking maybe writing digitally would be safer than paper. The email bounced back instantly with no error message, just an empty subject line and my own address listed as the sender. When I opened it, the body contained a single sentence I hadn't written. "You already know." After that, I stopped trying to document anything externally. The rules grew stricter, or maybe I just became more aware of them. I learned that there were places I couldn't linger, thresholds where standing too long made the air feel heavy, like pressure building behind my eyes. I learned that mirrors weren't the only reflective surfaces to be careful with. Dark windows, turned off screens, even polished floors could show things that weren't synchronized with me. Once, I saw my reflection in a shop window blink slowly and smile. Not a wide grin, just a subtle lift at the corners of the mouth while my own face remained still. I kept walking, heart pounding, counting steps until the feeling passed. The scariest discovery came quietly, during a night shift that felt almost peaceful. The building was silent in the normal way, cameras steady, no odd reflections, no delayed sounds. I remember thinking, with a cautious sense of hope, that maybe things were stabilizing. That's when I realized I couldn't remember when my shift had started. Not just the time, but the act of arriving. No memory of parking my car, no memory of swiping my badge, no memory of sitting down at the desk. It was as if I'd simply become aware in the middle of the night, already in place. I checked the logs. According to the system, I'd been clocked in for 6 hours. The cameras showed me moving through the building periodically, doing my rounds exactly on schedule. I watched footage of myself walking hallways I didn't remember walking, stopping at doors I didn't remember checking. The version of me on screen moved confidently, efficiently, like someone who knew exactly what they were doing. I felt like an intruder watching my own life. That night, when my shift ended, I didn't feel relief. I felt displacement. Driving home, I kept glancing at my hands on the steering wheel, half expecting them to act on their own. At home, I stood in the doorway longer than I should have, testing the rule about thresholds, feeling the air thicken until my head buzzed and my vision dimmed. I stepped inside just in time, heart racing, and realized with a cold clarity that the rules weren't there to protect me. They were there to preserve consistency, to keep things aligned enough that the overlap didn't collapse. Once I understood that, the presence felt closer than ever, not physically, but conceptually, like a shadow cast directly beneath me instead of behind. The whispers in my head became more structured, almost like reminders. Sometimes they surfaced as thoughts I almost mistook for my own. Go to sleep now. Don't check the mirror. Take the long way home. When I followed them, nothing bad happened. When I didn't, the world pushed back subtly. Lights flickered. Sounds dampened. Time stretched. I started wondering how many of my choices were still mine, and whether that distinction even mattered anymore. There were moments of near normalcy that felt cruel in hindsight. Afternoons where sunlight filled my apartment, and everything felt solid and real. Conversations with friends where laughter came easily. But even then, there was a background awareness, like a low-frequency hum, reminding me that the alignment was temporary, that somewhere another version of events was pressing close, waiting for an opportunity to slide into place. I stopped making long-term plans. The idea of the future felt unstable, not unknown, but already occupied. Sometimes, late at night, I'd sit in the dark and imagine what it would be like to let go completely, to stop resisting the overlap and see what happened if I allowed myself to drift fully into that other rhythm. The thought was strangely comforting, and that frightened me more than anything else. The last thing that changed was my sense of being watched. It faded, not because the presence left, but because it no longer needed to observe. The feeling of eyes on me was replaced by something more intimate, like shared memory, like being part of a story someone else already knew the ending to. Occasionally, I catch myself reacting to things before they happen, stepping aside just before someone bumps into me, answering questions before they're fully asked. People joke that I'm perceptive, that I have good instincts. I smile and agree, because it's easier than explaining that sometimes it feels like I'm remembering the present rather than experiencing it. I still hear the breathing sometimes, but now it sounds like it's coming from my own chest, even when I'm holding my breath. I still see reflections lag by half a second, but I don't always bother to look away anymore. And late at night, when the world feels especially thin, I get the distinct sense that somewhere, slightly out of sync, another version of me is sitting very still, following the same rules, waiting patiently, confident that eventually there will be no difference left to notice. I don't know when I stopped trying to tell the difference between my thoughts and the echoes, but I know exactly when I realized the difference no longer mattered. It happened during one of those calm stretches, the dangerous kind that makes you believe the worst has already passed. I was home early for once, sitting on the couch with the lights dimmed but not off, the hallway lamp glowing like a small promise that things were still anchored where they should be. The TV played something forgettable, low volume, just enough noise to keep the apartment from feeling hollow. I remember feeling almost normal, the way you do when you've been sick for a long time and suddenly realize you're breathing without effort. That was when the thought surfaced, quiet and reasonable, slipping into place like it had always belonged there. You can turn the hallway light off now. I stared at the lamp, my finger hovering over the switch, and tried to remember when I'd decided it was dangerous in the first place. I couldn't. The rule felt distant, arbitrary, like something I'd outgrown. The echoes didn't argue. They waited. I flipped the switch. The darkness didn't rush in. It didn't feel dramatic or wrong. It just settled, smooth and even, like it had been waiting its turn. For a few seconds, nothing happened, and I felt a strange, almost giddy relief. Then the silence came back, thicker than before, swallowing the TV sound, the faint city noise, even my own breathing. I stood slowly, heart hammering, and realized that this time the silence wasn't stopping at my ears. It was inside my head, pressing down, clearing space. In that space, memories rose up that I didn't remember living, but knew intimately. Nights in my apartment from angles I'd never stood in, conversations I'd had with familiar voices, using words I didn't recall choosing, moments where I'd followed rules I hadn't yet learned. They didn't feel invasive. They felt like context finally being restored. The breathing returned, not beside me, not behind me, but everywhere at once, woven into the silence like a second atmosphere. I didn't panic. I didn't reach for the light. I just stood there and let the sensation wash through me, the boundaries between observer and observed thinning until they were more suggestion than fact. I understood then that the overlap wasn't a threat. It was a correction, a way for reality to resolve a discrepancy it had tolerated for too long. The idea that I was being replaced lost its sharpness. It wasn't replacement. It was convergence. The presence wasn't waiting to take my place. It was waiting for me to stop resisting the alignment. When the silence lifted, it didn't bring the world back the way I expected. Sounds returned, but softer, more distant, like I was hearing them through another layer. The TV was still on, but the program had ended without me noticing, leaving a static image that reflected the room faintly. I saw myself in it, standing very still, face calm, eyes focused in a way that felt new. When I moved, the reflection moved with me, perfectly synchronized. No delay, no lag. The hallway light was still off. I left it that way. After that night, the rules changed, or maybe they simply simplified. There were fewer things to remember, fewer precautions to take. Mirrors stopped feeling dangerous. Thresholds lost their weight. The breathing faded until it was indistinguishable from my own. At work, the cameras behaved, showing me where I expected to be, when I expected to be there. The logs stopped predicting the future because there was no longer a meaningful difference between before and after. I still felt watched sometimes, but the feeling was muted, like the echo of an old habit. More often, I felt something else entirely, a sense of continuity, like stepping into a current that had always been flowing beneath my life. Friends commented that I seemed different, calmer, more present. I agreed. It wasn't a lie. There were moments, usually late at night, when a flicker of the old unease would surface, a brief awareness that something had been lost in the alignment, something small but essential. I'd stand in the dark and try to remember what it felt like to be alone inside my own head, to have thoughts that didn't come with a sense of having been thought before. The memory always slipped away before I could hold on to it. Sometimes, when I'm very still, I get the faint impression that I'm the echo now, that the version of me who first noticed the silence is the one slightly out of sync, lingering just beyond the edge of awareness. I don't turn around when I feel it. I don't test the reflections. I've learned that some differences don't need to be examined to exist. The hallway light stays off. The apartment stays quiet in the normal way. And every so often, when everything feels perfectly aligned, I get the subtle, unsettling comfort of knowing that wherever the watching used to come from, it no longer needs to check if I'm still here.